OK, Jasper, here we go.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you very much, thank you. Well, to start the show off on a high note, you'll be delighted to know that the royal family have found the perfect solution to the Edward and Marine's problem. They've sent in Princess Michael of Kent to finish the course for him. The army have come in for quite a bit of flack this week. Over 40 officers and men of the Queen's Own Highlanders on duty in Mombasa went on a sex spree and caught the clap. Their off-duty limits have now been restricted to the local safari park. This is true. So far, they've admitted to several cases of swine fever and foot and mouth, and one giraffe has slapped in a paternity suit. Anyway, it's the second week in January, and that means all over the country it's the usual whining and moaning about going back to school. You know, I don't want to go to school, Mum, I've got a tummy ache. And they're horrible at school, they bully me. That's just the teachers. When I was at school, we spent all our time trying to avoid teachers. Now they spend all day trying to find one. I've always found education confusing. I mean, from day one, we are taught about the essential 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. From there, we go on to learn that knickers starts with a K, Nat begins with a G, and there's no F in physics because there's a shortage of science teachers. Now, you thought we would have improved with time and experience, but no. See, these days it's even more confusing. I mean, take religious education. It used to be simple, right? Only 2 occasions to remember. December, it was Christmas, and let's all give thanks and rejoice that Jesus is born. Then comes March, it's Easter, and let's celebrate because he's dead. It's puzzling, but I mean, you didn't mind because both occasions meant lashings of chocolate and cream eggs with enough colouring, additives and preservatives to keep you hyped up through the church services. Now, of course, all that Christian stuff is elitist, and all creeds and beliefs have to be catered for. In schools now, they celebrate Chinese New Year, Jewish New Year, Passover, Hare Krishna Week, Festival of Light. And the trouble is, you see, they all come at about the same time. And last year, I had to send my kid to school with an unleavened, vegetarian, circumcised Peking duck. And he couldn't eat that till sunset because it was Ramadan. To be the key word in education these days. No one is allowed to be better than anyone else. I mean, take GCSE examinations, for instance. It's like a Reader's Digest raffle. I mean, you know, everyone who enters gets a prize. And no matter how incompetent you are, you get a pass. From grade A right down to the one where they stamp a letter on your forehead so you can remember it. And in the classroom, it's different. I mean, you can't have class 1 or class 2 now because, like, it makes class 2 feel inferior to class 1. So they have to call it something else, like you have, like, red class and blue class. And as if it makes any difference. You know, teachers have to say things like, OK, red class, write a thesis on Einstein's theory of relativity and how it relates to modern quantum physics. And blue class, well, you just play with your jelly mold. Mind you, Colour in schools is a very sensitive subject these days, but believe it or not, to avoid racial overtones, blackboards in some schools are now being painted green. Seriously. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, it would be interesting to see what colour chalk they use. I mean, when you think about it, you see, most colours have a prejudiced aspect to them. I mean, yellow's out, because that would offend the Chinese. Red's out, obviously. Green's out, because that would upset the Catholics. Orange represents Protestants. You're left with purple. Safe, isn't it? Yeah, let's have a go at those purple bastards. Send them back to their own planet. I do feel for kids these days, particularly at school. I mean, they can't even have a competitive game of hockey or football now. Of course, one team might lose and grow up to be heterosexual. You know, I can understand that a lack of proficiency in sport can be embarrassing. I mean, I well remember being the class prat at football. I mean, when picking sides, I was always the one left at the end. They argued about it. Who's having Carrott then? Well, we had him yesterday. Well, we had him all last week. All right, we'll have him, but he'll have to be goalkeeper. I was always the bloody goalkeeper. Even then they had to put a bell in the ball so I knew it was coming. But all that competitive element is being phased out now in the new trendy approach, you know. I mean, oh, sure, you get the odd egg and spoon race, you know, as long as it's a free-range egg. But what I can't understand is that how come it's the left-wing councils that discourage all the competition, yet it's the Eastern Bloc countries that win all the gold medals? I mean, well, how often have you seen an East German or a Russian slowing up at the tape coming, "Come on, everybody! Let's all cross the line together!" It's a plot, isn't it? The left-wing councils are stunting all our athletes so the East can win even more gold medals and proclaim what a wonderful system communism is. And yet the anomaly of it all is this. How did the left-wing councils get into power in the first place? By winning. Winning! And how did they win? By teamwork and competitiveness. It's ludicrous, isn't it? Yes, yes! You see, that's why I think there's so much talk about sex education in school these days. See, we didn't need sex education because, well, we didn't know what sex was. I mean, we were too busy running, jumping, batting, dribbling and throwing balls to worry about bonking. I mean, a school cap was something you won. I mean, now it's a communal contraceptive. I mean, nowadays, like a dad sits his son on his knee and says, "I want to talk to you about sex." And the kid says, "Yeah, what do you want to know?" Then there seems to be this exuberancy to teach them all about gay sex. I mean, I understand the need to explain there's such things as homosexuality and lesbian, but I mean, I'm sure in the present climate, kids must think it's a compulsory exam subject. I mean, is this a ploy by the councils to get round government cutbacks, I ask myself? I mean, stamp out heterosexuality completely, and eventually there won't be any children and they won't have to spend millions on education. I wonder if that's what they mean by a classless society. Mind you, it could have its advantages, I suppose. I mean, at least we'd be spared books like Jenny Lives with Eric and Martin. It'd be interesting to see how Jenny copes with it all. You know, there she is in bed in the morning between the two of them going, "Daddy, Daddy, can we go to the zoo today?" And Eric going, "Oh, I don't know, ask your father."
10-mile run, wading through freezing rivers in the middle of winter, crawling through mud, marching across barren mountains in Arctic snow. To find out if you're suitable for this kind of life, there'll be a series of tough and demanding interviews with your father. And if he says you're in, you're in. the Marines. Wouldn't you want the hell out of it too?
Well, what else has been happening this week? Well, the good news from the city was that Unipart's been privatised. It's now called Private Parts. The bad news from the city was of another financial scandal, and someone's written on the wall of the men's lavatory in the stock exchange, "Whatever happened to the old-fashioned city gent?" And so underneath, someone else has written, "He's helping police with their inquiries." On Monday, there was the funeral of Lord Stockton, whose last words were, "I'm going to sleep now." And I wonder what some other famous people's last words might be. South African Prime Minister P.W. Botha, "Everything's going black." How about Oliver Reed? "Forget the tonic, there isn't time." Jeffrey Archer, "I left the money under the pillow." And then, Aled Jones, that marvellous boy soprano from Wales, announced his retirement from singing this week. And we wondered why, so I thought I'd call up and ask him. Hello, is Aled there?
Aled Jones, yeah.
Well, I think that answers our question. On Thursday, a Navy-guided missile destroyer recovered a record shipment of marijuana from the Caribbean. They say it's probably the biggest ever drugs haul since Elvis Presley's autopsy. And now let's have a look at what else has been happening. In Earl's Court, the news of the week was that the boat show is back in town, and where you get lots of lovely boats, you invariably get lots of lovely people. Of course, using a pretty girl to sell a product is a familiar chauvinist marketing technique, and if the product is a boat, it's even more effective, they think, if the pretty girl can give a new meaning to the phrase, heave to. But lest there be charges of sexism, at least one boat came complete with an able-bodied seaman, or rather a pretty officer. Whilst the inflatables had their models as well. Yes, there's something for everybody at this year's boat show. Yes, there's something for everybody at this year's boat show. We had great fun there. When we did that piece, this is true story, we had to take all that equipment in. And we got a couple of other gags as well, which didn't quite work. And one of them was like, we took some butter for like anchors away, you know. Well, that's why we didn't use it. But I went in with Duncan, that's it, Duncan, the floor manager. And we had to go in. And I went with him, and we had to go up to security, because they're very tight at security at the boat show. And of course, Duncan had got this big bag. So he put it on the desk, and the guard was there. And first of all, he took out this big inflatable doll, and 4 pounds of anchor butter, and a John Bull repair outfit. And he sort of looked at it, and he looked at it, he said, "Whoa," he said, "you can't take the butter in there." Anyway, I think it's time for Loudon Wainwright. Is Loudon about? Loudon Wainwright. What sort of week has it been for you, Loudon?
I've been working real hard, Jasper. I read the newspapers every day, though. I've got to keep up with what's happening. You know, I saw this amazing thing. I cut it out. Look at this. An item in the paper. American customs have caught their first person trying to smuggle in British gin.
Yeah.
You know, folks, he might have gotten away with it if one of the officers hadn't noticed something suspicious in a bag of cocaine. You tell the jokes, Jasper.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Loudon Wainwright.
The talking blues for you now. Well, it's January 10th, the beginning of the year. Everything's cloudy and a little unclear. Nobody knows what's coming down, especially over in D.C. town. Talking about Washington, we got another scandal and a leader on the run. Yeah, the president's had a hell of a week. They had another look and they took another peek. The president's had a hell of a time. They're checking him out in front and behind. He'll seem like a stranger to his nephew and his nieces. All that's going to be left are polyps and pieces. If I were you, I'd ride side saddle this weekend, Ron. Well, that's a little uncouth and slightly crass, but there's a posse that's after what's left of his ass. Because south of the border, they needed some funds. They sold rifles to a band of Iranians. But they didn't get the Congress okay. They just went ahead and did it anyway. Well, that's the American way. We're number one. It's got to be done. Want to buy a gun? Go for it. Speaking of guns and national defense, Ron's got another budget, but it don't make sense. It's a billion, trillion, zillion. Nobody knows how much that is or how many zeros, but to balance it out, we'll need a few more cuts. We'll be eating dog food and living in huts. Yeah, I'm afraid we're going to have to cut some of these social programs, you know, like daycare centers and decent housing and food for old people. Well, we don't want them bloodthirsty Nicaraguans taking over any of them car washes in Santa Barbara, California. He's been under the gun, he's been under the knife, the media's at him, and so is his wife. Things look kind of gray, like they're going to get black. They're on his tits, and she's on his back. I saw some graffiti in a telephone booth said, Ronald Reagan ain't telling the truth. Do you believe that? Yeah, I believe that. Well, you know, when you got that job, I mean, when you're in there, when you're in the hot spot, when you're there in the Oval Office, you know, things happen. And, well, you've heard the expression, tell a little white lie. Well, sometimes you got to tell a little white house lie. Well, we got another election coming in '88, and the Republicans need somebody that's really great. We need somebody in there really good. We need somebody cool like Clint Eastwood. Charles Bronson for a running mate, and Chuck Norris for the Secretary of the State. Just to keep things real intense, we'll have Sylvester Stallone as the Secretary of the Defense. Yeah! Rambo City. Well, you know what they say in American football, don't you? The best defense is a good offense. So let's keep it offensive. Well, if Reagan's lucky, he'll have 2 more years. I heard Thatcher wants to have an election over here. Now, I'm not in a position to take a side. I mean, y'all vote for your ticket and to take you for the ride. But if you find yourself in a situation that's hot to handle and you having a political scandal, well, there's just one thing I'd like to say. Why not fix it the American way? Hey, hey, hey. Here's what you do. When you get into trouble, the first thing you do is you always plead the Fifth Amendment because, well, when you're in trouble, that's always a good thing to do. I mean, you know, you're always innocent until they catch you red-handed. And then if they do catch you red-handed, well, then you resign. You take a year off. You go write a book about it. Then you get yourself a Hollywood agent, and they make it into a $20 million TV movie.
Months now, we've been hearing about the great North-South divide. It's been in the news this week. The government report on Thursday was merely the official recognition of it all. Because the problem is, for me, is that I'm from Birmingham. And Brum's not really north or south. You know, we feel a bit isolated. It's a bit like living in Berlin up there. In fact, we've installed our own Checkpoint Charlie strung across Spaghetti Junction. Except on the north, it's called Checkpoint Kevin. On the south, it's Checkpoint Jeremy. Oh. see, when you actually think about it, Britain's always been divided. I mean, when this island was first invaded hundreds of years ago, all the true Britons were forced back into Wales and Cornwall. I mean, that's why all the Welsh sing in choirs, trying to contact the mates in Land's End. You know? It also explains a few other things. For instance, the Vikings from Scandinavia invaded the north, but the south was invaded by the Saxons from Germany. That's why all southerners drive Mercedes and BMWs. And that's why they don't say yes in the south. They say, yeah, yeah. And just to complicate matters, in 1066, the French landed in Hastings, and they all settled in the south as well, which is why French and the home counties have so much in common. The people are rude, you can't get any decent beer, and they speak English with a funny accent. Well, you do, don't you? I mean, where else in the country can you drink cake? Or shove cake up your nose? What effect did the Vikings have on the north with all those pre-Christian gods like Thor, Odin, Geoffrey Boycott? Some 1,200 years ago now, the Norsemen came and gained control and went burning and pillaging, destroying, laying the entire north to waste. I think they're still in power, actually. But the whole two-nation divide problem must be one gigantic headache for any government. I mean, of course, it all comes down to work. The government report states that 94% of job losses are in the north, which accounts for the present drift south of the workforce. People have traditionally made their way down south to find fame and fortune. Dick Whittington came to London expecting to find the streets paved with gold. Probably why they called him Dick. But you've got to feel sorry for all the social rejects who come down here to huddle together for warmth and companionship, drinking the night away. But this is no time to talk about the House of Commons. Yes, mind you, even MPs can't afford to live here anymore. Do you know the price of the average semi-detached in London would buy you up north? Ooh, Lancashire. So are there any answers to it all? Well, the usual unhelpful suggestions. One solution put forward would be for the north to set up new opportunities to supply the prosperous south with urgently required commodities. The south desperately needs hundreds of thousands of those for sale signs. A perfect use for all the pit props from the mines they're closing down. And cloth caps are in great demand in St John's Wood as doggy pooper scoopers. But surely they're missing out on the biggest opportunity of all. Why not make the whole of the north a tourist attraction? Turn the whole area into one giant theme park. Immediately we'd have the largest industrial museum in the world. Right? The northeast could be fenced off for a wildlife reserve. Right? Tourists would have great fun driving through and feeding the unemployed. Keep your windows closed, mind. And the never-to-be-forgotten day trip to see the multicoloured day-glow inhabitants of Sellafield. Social point there. But we do have this great divide, there's no getting away from it. It's surprising, really, with all the communications today, we still have those stereotyped pigeonhole ideas of each other. For instance, in the north, you have onions with your tripe. Down here, you take Howard's Way neat. In the south, you have jacuzzis, right? In the north, we have to make do with a bath and a curry. And supposing you want to portray someone who's dour and stubborn, you put on a Yorkshire accent. Shut the face! Pigeons are staying in bedroom with us. If it's someone sharp, it's always fell off a lorry, governor. Know what I mean? Hey? Yours for a fiver, all right. Stum. Hey? And if it's someone half-witted and moronic, it's I don't watch Crossroads because the plots are too complicated. But where will it all end? Could it be the unthinkable? A civil war. Can you imagine a civil war? Let's see how that would turn out. Thank you. Here's a BBC news flash. Apparently hostilities have broken out in Yorkshire, and the BBC's man on the spot is waiting to talk to us now. Tell me, John, what's going on up there?
The country is on the verge of civil war. The trouble started when a couple from Surrey, travelling north to go grouse shooting in Scotland, were kidnapped in Yorkshire and held hostage. The kidnappers are believed to be members of the North of Watford tendency, better known as Knout.
What are their demands, John?
Well, Jasper, their demands are pretty ludicrous. They want £1 million, a villa in Barbados, and a job. The government has immediately given in to the first two demands, but there's no way they're giving them a job.
Thank you. Things must be serious. The government have just dispatched Terry Waite up the M1. Excuse me. Hello? Thank you, Selina. It seems we have some film just in of events in the capital. The Great Drift South has begun as thousands of northern refugees flood into London. But Londoners are having them sent back. Here we see members of the 1st Battalion of the Norman Tebbit Mounted Cavalry swinging into action. For all the northern internees and suspected 5th columnists, the government have been arranging suitable accommodation. Well, seems like the first civil war since 1642 is underway. Latest news in a tit-for-tat kidnapping, a Teesside lorry driver was stopped in Dorking and battered unconscious with copies of The Guardian. The Knockstock Con have been infirmed. This whole situation is making big news around the world. Let's see what the Americans are making of it.
Hi, Channel 8 Eyewitness News. And top story of the day, the roller skating ostrich of Idaho breaks a world record. We'll be catching that zany bird later, but first, Civil War in Britain, and over to Joe Hershey in London, England.
Thank you, Bob. I'm here in London, capital of class-ridden Britain, where the yuppies and yumpies are sharpening their city umbrellas to repel an invasion of non-working classes from the Northern Territory. As many have long suspected, Britain really does consist of two nations, stagnation and domination. The whole of the mother country is plunged into civil war, and knowing the English, it will be an extremely civil war. Last time, it was Roundheads versus Cavaliers. This time, the Roundheads are driving Cavaliers. Parallels are being drawn between what's happening here and our own Civil War. The big difference is, in the American Civil War, the slaves were in the South. This is Joe Hershey, Eyewitness News, at the heart of the hostilities, returning to you, Bob, in the studio.
Well, it sounds pretty wacky to us, Joe. But now back to our top story. That galloping gobbler, that roller skating ostrich who set the whole of America alight.
Latest reports indicate that there is now a complete shutdown of both factories in the north. Owing to heavy censorship, we cannot bring you live pictures of the panic in the streets. But as the conflict worsens and northern forces advance, military experts are predicting that the first clash will take place at the junction of the M1 and the M25, where Alan Goodall reports.
The M25 motorway, near the crucial intersection with the M1. And as you can see, preparations are underway to fortify this section of motorway near where the two of them join. For rumour has it that an advance raiding party of marauding Leeds United guerrillas, armed with sharpened slabs of Kendal mint cake, are on their way and will attack here at dawn tomorrow. Already, Toddington services have been overrun, and the victorious Northern rebels have celebrated their victory there by burning giant piles of muesli and nut cutlets. Already, all the nutritious organic foods have been replaced with black pudding butties, lard cake and tripe vol au vent. However, the Southern Young Conservatives are not taking this lying down, and along this section of motorway they're busy fortifying it with large speaker bins with which they're going to blast out Chris de Burgh's Lady in Red album at 4,000 decibels. And if you'll excuse me, I think they're just about to go for a sound check.
Goodbye, Alan. Well, they do say that civil war produces the most inhuman atrocities. Reports are coming in of terrifying tortures being inflicted on Southerners taken prisoner in the North. Our reporter has smuggled us film of this horrifying ordeal in a ritual known as the Beer Hunter. A form of Russian roulette is played with full cans of Newcastle Brown. We should warn viewers that these scenes may be upsetting, especially to Barbican drinkers.
Right, lad, you're first. As I knows what will happen to thee.
Yeah. Mummy.
Now thee, you effete southern bedwetter. Go on.
That was so good I can't go through with it.
Come on, you squinty-eyed little Guildford Rotarian. What put into the Samalloy where'd you dump this?
I don't care. Well, some things even Rotarians won't do.
Right, turn it on.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bernard Manning!
Back again. He's gone on for about 4 hours. Texted someone's back to the town hall. I said, "Can you get the rent?" He said, "No, and I wouldn't play any rent for the draft of the bloody house."
Never fails.
Sorry about that, but war is hell. What, you're asking yourselves, could be worse than that? Unfortunately, I have to report that in the south there has been an outbreak of Geordie baiting.
Oh, isn't he great? I'd like to take him home and mount him.
Almost human, you know.
Do bait him, Henry. Bait him.
Righto, Carrott. Is everybody ready? Yes! I say, Geordie Parson, how do you say goodbye to your girlfriend in Germany? Auf Wiedersehen. Hut!
Do let me have a go, please, Henry. Tell me, what do you spread on your bread?
Real butter!
Baity, baity, baity. Baity, baity, baity. Go on, Henry. Do it.
All right, then. Tell me, Geordie thingy, what's the name of your favourite television programme? Why, I 5-4.
Clearly a case for Amnesty International. Latest news seems to indicate that some sort of truce has been arrived at. Arthur Scargill has returned north after negotiations in London with a promise of peace work in our time. The Prime Minister herself has made an extensive tour of the north, taking in the far reaches of Letchworth and Hemel Hempstead. Finally, let's see what the papers have made of it all. The Daily Telegraph. Civil insurrection between northern and southern forces. The Daily Mail. Civil war, north versus south. And, of course, the Sun. What else can be said? Good night.